Hey y'all, how you doing? So I have another one for you. It is called psychological warfare. Now, when you think about psychological warfare, it's got a few other names like psychological operation. It's also got mental warfare, okay? Now, with the psychological operations, I think more military because they have to be tactical, they have to be strategic. But if we're thinking about warfare itself, there is some strategy involved, okay? So, let's start with the definition and we're going to go through history a little bit and we're going to come out on the other end, okay? So, deliberate use of propaganda, threats, and manipulation to influence the thinking of and the emotions, the attitudes, and the behaviors of an opponent with the goal of weakening their will to fight or resist. Now, I want you to think about that. Keep that in mind as I talk a little bit about things that happen in history. Now, when I think about psychological warfare, of course, I looked up some of the ways that it has taken place over time. And one of the earliest written psychological warfare is in the Bible, it was in the book of Judges. And within that book, it talked about Gideon. Okay? Now, Gideon was under attack. The Midianites wanted to take ownership of Gideon. Now, Gideon only had 300 soldiers. And Gideon had decided, listen, Gideonites had decided that they wanted to protect their land and their family. So they were trying to figure out, like, how could they do that? So they had to be strategic. All right? Now, since they knew that they only had 300 soldiers, but the Midianites that were wanting to, defeat them had thousands of soldiers, they had to think it through. First thing they did was they used light and sound to defeat them. And this is how. They used two lights. They used a torch and they also used a lantern. So it looked like it was more than just one person. Okay? So there was two lights, one person. And they also had trumpets. Now, if you think about warfare, they didn't really have much of anything to fight with. I mean, they could catch somebody on fire, but they didn't really have a weapon, right? But this weapon worked. This is how it worked. They scared their opponent because the opponent was sleeping at the time, okay? And they had surrounded their opponent. They blew the trumpet. It scared their opponent, okay? And the opponents started fighting each other, thinking they were fighting the enemy because they were blinded by the light. Okay. Plus, it looked like it was way more soldiers than it was. And so, in defeat, the Midianites retreated. And the Gideonites ended up keeping their land and taking care of their family and protecting their family. That was one of the earlier writings about psychological warfare. Now, we can go to Africa. Let's go to Africa. In Africa, great people, loving people, kind, generous people, great leaders, right? A lot of resources in Africa, even to this day, even though they have been exploited beyond belief, they still have a lot of resources there. They are still sought after. Africa has had so many resources that they have made other continents, other countries wealthy. And there's still resources there. And unfortunately, though, some of the resources that they had that would have been helpful if they still had it were their people. So a lot of the people who were put on that boat that were threatened and beaten and all that kind of stuff that were brought over here ended up being creators, inventors, people who actually helped to build the society that we work in right now, that we live in right now. Imagine if those people were not kidnapped. Imagine if they were still in Africa. Africa, even though there are some great places in Africa, there are spaces in Africa that are beautiful and built up and all of that. There would have been even more of that if the people who were stolen or kidnapped that were sent over here had been over there. Okay? And US of A would not have been built up the way that it is. And that's just the truth. Okay, so in a lot of ways, Africa has lost a lot of the resources, right? But they are a great people, and they're going to rise. They're going to rise up. They're going to take back what's theirs. It's just a matter of time. Okay, but while we are talking about psychological warfare, though, we are attacked through threats. Okay, black people, especially African American. I say that because I know that people who are from Africa or from different islands, they have been manipulated to assume that African Americans who are in the US of A are people who are lazy. They don't do anything. They have all these resources, and all they do is complain. And that's not true. That's not true. A lot of the lead work has been done by our ancestors, and we continue to do the lead work now, that people who don't live here, when they come over here, are able to enjoy. But they don't know that because, again, because of psychological warfare, they have been preconditioned to assume that African Americans are one way when we're another. Okay? And we are aware of that. We understand it. It's just like, we still gonna do our thing. We're not worried about anybody else because we understand what's happening. Okay? Now, for us, it's a threat. Driving while black, walking while black, working while black, anything while black is a threat. Okay? We have to be careful, even thinking while black. I'm just saying, we have to be careful of those things because of the psychological warfare that's on the other side. Now, for us, it's threats because we're not safe. Okay? But on the other side, there's fear. So the way that they have been pre-programmed is to fear. Fear that somebody's going to come in, break in, some black person is going to take their purse, or some black person is going to steal. That's why when we walking through a store, we hardly ever are able to walk through it in peace. Somebody's always watching, you know what I'm saying? Or they're going to take our place. They're going to take our job. So the fear is instilled in the other side. And that's how they are in psychological warfare. Get it? So threat for us, fear for them. Now, here's the thing. Stress is the greatest weapon of psychological warfare. If you think about it, just for a moment. When you're stressed out, you can't think. When you're stressed out, you can't see anything but the stress. Whatever the problem is all you see. Okay? So you don't have clarity. You don't have an ability to think because you're wired up with whatever this thing you're worried about. You can't find a solution. Okay? That is how we stay in psychological warfare. Stress keeps us bound. All of us. So stress of threats and the stress of fear over there. Okay? And if you want to talk about medically, stress causes heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, the list goes on. Okay? Now, here's the thing. The same people who are causing psychological warfare within the black community is also the same people who is causing psychological warfare in the white community. Here's the difference. I want you to think of a pyramid, okay? Within the pyramid, at the top, that's the top 3%. We're going to say that. And then the next one is the middle class, upper middle class. And then you got middle class and you got lower middle class. Now, lower middle class are people that if they miss a paycheck, they're done. They have to keep working. Right? And then those under them are people who, though they are working, the ends are barely meeting. Okay? Barely meeting. Some of them have to do a job and a half. Okay? And then the people under them are people who, even though they are kind of meeting their quotas and they kind of meeting their bills, they're not, because they are making enough money to not be able to get resources from the government, but they're not making enough to really make the ends meet. So it's like rob Peter to pay Paul, and so there's like, this month I can't pay the light bill, I'll pay it next, that kind of thing. Because they're literally not, the ends are not meeting, and not, they're not making enough. And then you have those who are disabled or got a lot going on, where they have to be on government assistance. Now, here's the thing. This is not a black thing. This pyramid I'm talking about is all people. It's all of us, okay? So if you think about the government, and then the ones that make too much, just $5 too much to be on the government, and then you think about the other one that really can't ever lose a job, and then you think about the next set, those people are the people who are really at war. Now let me tell you why. You have those black people that's trying to do their thing. They're under a lot of stress. Again, barely making ends meet or not making ends meet at all. That's a lot of stress. Then you have the other side. Same situation. But they are told by the top 3%, but you're white though. So therefore, you will have favor. Therefore, you are better than the most educated black person because you are a part of us. You are white. And so what ends up happening is the white people that are having the same problems as the black people, barely making it, they're looking over there at them like, you're not making it because you're not supposed to. You're not making it because you're stealing it or you're not working or whatever the case. Because in their head, they have been told all of these stories about black people, not understanding that they are literally on the same page, living basically the same way, going through the same thing. But the difference is they're not black though. That's psychological warfare. That is literally how you, what's the saying? I'm going to have you looking over here at this problem while I pick your pocket. That's literally what's happening. That's what happened in November. Racism was so much of, and nobody actually wants to say that, but I'm going to say it out loud. Racism was such an issue for people that they were thinking, okay, you do whatever you want to them. I don't care. Just as long as you don't do it to me. Because you remember, I'm white. You know, I have favor. You know, I'm privileged. Okay? Now all of this stuff is happening, and it's like, wait a minute. It's supposed to happen to those people. No. These policies happen to everyone that they affect. Black people, on the other hand, already knew. A lot of us are not even on those programs. A lot of us are not even getting those resources. We are not really the recipients of a lot of that stuff. But the stereotype is that we are. And so with them losing it, they didn't realize that we weren't losing much of anything because we're not really on those resources. You get what I'm saying? They did not know that they were shooting themselves in the foot because they had been preconditioned to assume this was a black thing when it was actually a them thing. That's psychological warfare, okay? And we're all a part of it. We're all dealing with it, okay? Now, I'm going to go into a Bible verse that I think will kind of bring this home a little bit. The Bible verse is 1 Peter 5th chapter 8th verse, and it says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." Now, let's take the first part. Be sober-minded. What does that mean? That means whatever you're going to seek relief, you are causing yourself not to be sober. So whether that's sex, drinking, drugs, whatever your vice is, that is a way that you're not being sober-minded, okay? You're trying to get relief from the stress, but you're not clear. You don't have clarity, okay? Watchful. Now, we call it woke. And I know that woke has ended up being this huge, I don't even know what they call it woke now, but I know the opposite of woke is sleep. So if I'm woke, that means I'm aware. That means that I can see stuff. That means that I have some form of clarity because I am awake, right? If I'm sleeping, I'm not aware of anything that's going on around me. So Would you want to be woke or do you want to be asleep? I'm just saying. In the Bible verse, it says be watchful. You can't be watchful sleep. Okay? And this enemy, this devil that he's talking about in the scripture, is exactly what we're all fighting. We're fighting the same thing. We have the same problems. It's just that the approach towards each group is different, but still psychological warfare. And if you want to get technical about it, it's spiritual warfare too. So, how can you get yourself out of this? Here we go. Talk to wise people. Now, I know some people don't want to hear what you got to say, and you may not want to hear what they got to say. But how are you going to learn if you don't listen? You can't learn if you don't listen. Okay? Listen to wise people. There are people out there that really have a perception that can help you out if you're willing to take on the lesson. The next thing that you might want to do is understand that we are all one people. We're all going through things. We're all trying to live our life the best of our ability. And we all have the same enemy. We really do. If we can understand that we're all victims of the same thing. And I know black people already know. I'm preaching to the choir for y'all. But the truth of the matter is, if we can all understand that we're all victims of this thing, then maybe we can get to a point of making the changes that need to happen so that we can all live a better life. Try your best to reduce your stress. Stress is a killer. It can take you out. And it definitely steals from you your ability to think, your ability to learn, your ability to do anything. It can paralyze you. Fear definitely can paralyze you. So take your power back. Okay? Now, there's a few quotes here. An enemy who sees you strong will often retreat in silence. So, if your enemy sees that you ain't having it, they retreat in silence. The next one is outthink your enemy and you will already won. Outthink your enemy and you've already won. Now, us as black people, we are often told, you got to do better, you got to do better, you got to put in like 150% in order to be seen as average, okay? We've been taught that, so it had been instilled in us to outthink, okay? So that's a quote for us for sure. The strongest opponent faces defeat before the fight begins. And if you think about that, we all face defeat before the fight, right? Because you can win and you can lose. But if you never fight, you've already lost, right? Okay? And then the next one is, in silence and distance lies the power to conquer distractions. Right now, there's a lot of distracting going on. And a lot of us are victim to that distraction because it's something going over here, something going over here. It's just so much going on. It's a lot, right? But the thing is this. We already know what's happening. And we already know these are distractions. So why even give it any of our energy? While we're over here looking at this distraction, this is being passed over here. And then next thing you know, somebody's hurt. And here's the thing. The way this thing is going, a lot of people are going to be out here dying. Sick. Not having coverage. All that kind of stuff. Because of psychological warfare. So I want to encourage all of you. Take your power back. Please understand what's happening. Eyes open, ears open. Make sure you have clarity. If you can put down the drink or whatever, put it down so you can have clarity, so that you can know not only how to survive, but how to thrive in this time. Okay? Now, the song for today is Take a Bow. You look so dumb right now. standing outside my house, trying to apologize. You're so ugly when you cry. Please, just cut it out. Don't tell me you're sorry, 'cause you're not. Baby, when I know you're only sorry you got caught, but you put on quite a show, really had me going. Now it's time to go. Curtains finally closing. Now it's time to go. Very entertaining, but it's over now. Go on and take a bow. That's how black women, black people are thinking right now. Take a bow. We already know what's up. Wake up before it's too late. All right, y'all. And on the next one, thank you for listening.